The Hidden Leaf village basked in the golden glow of sunset, its streets alive with the chatter of villagers returning home after a long day. But beneath the peaceful surface, tension simmered. Naruto Uzumaki stood atop the Hokage monument, his bright orange jacket fluttering in the wind as he scanned the horizon. Something felt off, a prickling sensation at the back of his neck, the kind that usually preceded disaster. Beside him, Shikamaru sighed, rubbing his temples. Troublesome. You feel it too, huh? Naruto nodded, his blue eyes narrowing. Yeah. Like someone's watching us. The air crackled, and a figure materialized before them in a swirl of black flames, Sasuke Uchiha, his Sharingan glowing crimson. But something was wrong. His usual cold demeanor had twisted into something darker, a smirk playing on his lips that sent a chill down Naruto's spine. Long time no see, loser, Sasuke taunted, his voice dripping with malice. Naruto's fists clenched. Sasuke? What the hell's going on? Shikamaru's shadow stretched toward the Uchiha, but Sasuke's Rinnegan flared, and he vanished, reappearing behind them with a kunai aimed at Naruto's throat. Naruto barely dodged, the blade grazing his cheek as he spun, slamming a Rasengan toward Sasuke's chest. The attack connected, but instead of recoiling, Sasuke laughed, his body dissolving into black mist before reforming. Pathetic, he sneered. You always were too slow. Naruto's eyes widened. A clone? But how? Sasuke didn't give him time to think. His hands blurred through seals, and a monstrous inferno-style fireball erupted toward them. Shikamaru's shadows lashed out, deflecting the flames just in time, but the heat seared the air, leaving the ground charred. Naruto gritted his teeth, channeling Kurama's chakra. Orange energy surged around him, his whisker marks darkening as he entered Nine Tails chakra mode. I don't know what's gotten into you, but I'm bringing you back, Sasuke. He lunged, a golden Rasengan forming in each hand. Sasuke's Rinnegan spun, and he activated Susanoo, a skeletal ribcage shielding him before the attack landed. The impact sent shockwaves through the monument, cracked spider webbing across the stone. Shikamaru seized the opening, his shadow stitching through the debris to ensnare Sasuke's legs. Got you, he muttered. But Sasuke's smirk never faded. His body flickered, and suddenly, Shikamaru was the one trapped, an illusion. Genjutsu? When? Sasuke's fist connected with Shikamaru's gut, sending him crashing into the cliffside. Naruto roared, unleashing a barrage of shadow clones, each one hurling Rasengans. Sasuke weaved through them effortlessly, his Sharingan predicting every move. Then, with a single hand sign, the sky darkened. Chidori spears rained down, impaling the clones in bursts of smoke. Naruto barely avoided the onslaught, skidding to a halt as Sasuke closed the distance, his Chidori screeching in his palm. The two attacks collided, Rasengan against Chidori, the force of their clash tearing the ground apart. Naruto's muscles burned, but Sasuke's strength was unnatural, his chakra thick with a malevolence that didn't belong. With a final push, Sasuke overpowered him, sending Naruto flying. He crashed through trees, his body screaming in protest as he rolled to a stop. Gasping, he looked up just in time to see Sasuke looming over him, Amaterasu flames swirling in his eye. This ends now, Sasuke declared. But before the black fire could ignite, a kunai embedded itself in the ground between them, Sakura's precision strike. Naruto, move, she shouted, landing beside him with her fists crackling with chakra. Sasuke's grin widened. All three of Team 7 reunited. How nostalgic. Sakura's emerald eyes burned with fury. This isn't you, Sasuke. What happened? He tilted his head, his voice dripping with mockery. Maybe I just finally embraced the truth, that this world is beyond saving. Naruto forced himself to his feet, his mind racing. This wasn't just Sasuke. This was something else. A clone? A manipulation? Whatever it was, it had Sasuke's skills, his memories, and none of his restraint. The fight was far from over. And if they didn't stop him, the entire village would pay the price. The air crackled with tension as Sasuke's clone, its once shared memories now twisted by dark chakra, lunged at Naruto with a speed that blurred the edges of reality. Naruto barely dodged, his instinct screaming as a kunai grazed his cheek, drawing a thin line of blood. TCH, not bad, the clone sneered, its voice dripping with malice, but you'll have to do better than that. Naruto wiped his face, his blue eyes hardening. I don't know what messed you up, but I'm bringing you down, hard. The clone's Sharingan spun, predicting Naruto's movements before he even made them. It countered every punch, every kick, as if playing a cruel game. Naruto gritted his teeth, feeling the weight of exhaustion creeping in. Then, with a sudden burst of chakra, he vanished in a swirl of orange, reappearing above the clone with a Rasengan blazing in his palm. The clone smirked, activating its own Mangekyo Sharingan, and in a flash, swapped places with a nearby boulder. The Rasengan obliterated the rock, sending debris flying as the clone retaliated with a Chidori, its lightning screeching like 1,000 birds. Sakura intercepted, her fist slamming into the ground, creating a crater that forced the clone to leap back. "You're not the only one who's grown," she growled, her healing chakra already mending Naruto's minor wounds. Sasuke, watching from the shadows, finally stepped forward, his rinnegan glowing. "This ends now," he declared, drawing his sword. The clone laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. "You're all so predictable." With a snap of its fingers, shadow clones erupted from the ground, each one mirroring the original's sinister grin. The battlefield erupted into chaos. Naruto summoned his sage mode, his senses sharpening as natural energy surged through him. He weaved through the clones, his movements fluid, each strike precise. Sakura fought defensively, her monstrous strength shattering any clone that dared close in. Sasuke, meanwhile, teleported between shadows, his blade flashing as he dismantled illusions with his Sharingan's insight. But the clone was relentless, adapting to their strategies almost instantly. Just as Naruto landed a solid hit, the clone's body dissolved into black flames, Amaterasu. Naruto yelped, rolling away as the fire licked at his cloak. Sasuke extinguished it with his rinnegan, but the distraction cost them. The clone seized the opening, slamming a fist into Sasuke's gut before roundhouse kicking Sakura into a tree. Naruto roared, his Kurama cloak flaring to life as 9 tails materialized. "You want power? I'll give you power." The clone didn't flinch. Instead, its form twisted, dark chakra enveloping it like a second skin. A grotesque imitation of the Susanoo formed around it, its bones jagged and oozing malice. Naruto charged, his Baijuu bomb forming in his mouth, while Sasuke's perfect Susanoo rose beside him, its sword gleaming. The attacks collided in a cataclysmic explosion, shaking the earth and sending shockwaves for miles. When the dust settled, the clone stood, battered but unbroken. "Is that all?" it taunted, its voice hoarse. Naruto panted, his body pushed to the limit. Then, a flicker of movement, Sakura, her chakra concentrated into a single, devastating punch. The clone turned too late. Her fist connected, the impact sending it crashing through the forest. Silence. Then, a low chuckle. The clone emerged, its body flickering like a dying flame. "You almost had me." Its form began to dissolve, but its eyes burned with hatred. "This isn't over." With a final snarl, it vanished, leaving the trio breathless and battered. Naruto collapsed to his knees, his energy spent. Sasuke sheathed his sword, his expression unreadable. Sakura knelt beside Naruto, her hands already glowing green. "We won. For now," she whispered. But the dread in the air lingered. Somewhere, the real threat was still out there, and it was only getting stronger. The air crackled with tension as Naruto and Sasuke stood back to back, their breaths ragged, their bodies battered but unbroken. The battlefield was a wasteland of shattered earth and smoldering flames, the remnants of their desperate struggle against Sasuke's rogue clone, a twisted reflection of his former self, now consumed by vengeance and power. The clone's crimson Sharingan gleamed with madness, his voice a venomous hiss as he taunted them. "You two are still clinging to your ideals? Pathetic. I've surpassed you both, this world will burn, and I'll remake it in my image." Naruto wiped blood from his lip, his blue eyes blazing with defiance. "We've faced worse, bastard. You're just another shadow we'll dispel." Sasuke, his rinnegan pulsing, tightened his grip on his sword. "This ends now," he growled. With a shared nod, they lunged forward, Naruto's Rasengan swirling in his palm while Sasuke's blade crackled with lightning. The clone smirked, weaving hand signs with blinding speed, a massive fireball erupted toward them. Naruto barely dodged, the heat searing his skin, while Sasuke sliced through the flames, closing the distance in an instant. Their clash sent shockwaves rippling through the earth, each strike a symphony of desperation and resolve. The clone was relentless, his movements fluid and unpredictable, exploiting every opening. He kicked Naruto square in the chest, sending him skidding across the ground, then pivoted to block Sasuke's sword with a kunai before slamming a Chidori into his ribs. Sasuke coughed blood, his vision blurring, but he refused to fall. Naruto roared, summoning Kurama's chakra, his form flickering between human and fox-like fury as he charged again. The clone met him head-on, their fists colliding with enough force to split the earth beneath them. "You're weak," the clone sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "You cling to bonds like they mean something, but they're just chains." Naruto's jaw clenched. "You're wrong. It's our bonds that make us strong." He pushed forward, his Rasengan expanding, but the clone twisted, driving a knee into his gut before slamming him into the ground. Sasuke, gasping, forced himself up, his Rinnegan spinning wildly. Amaterasu. Black flames erupted, engulfing the clone, but he merely laughed, shedding the fire like a second skin. "Is that all you've got?" Naruto's vision swam, his body screaming in protest, but he refused to yield. He thought of his friends, of Konoha, of Sasuke, his rival, his brother. He couldn't let this end here. With a surge of determination, he reached deep within, feeling the familiar warmth of Kurama's chakra intertwining with his own. "One last shot," he muttered. Sasuke, sensing his resolve, nodded. "Together." The clone lunged, his Chidori screaming toward them, but this time, they were ready. Naruto's Rasengan met Sasuke's sword, their energies merging into a single, devastating force. The impact was cataclysmic, light erupted, blinding and all-consuming. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Then, silence. When the dust settled, the clone lay broken, his form flickering like a dying ember. His eyes, once filled with hatred, now held something else: regret? Understanding? Maybe. "You were right," he whispered before dissolving into nothingness. Naruto collapsed to his knees, exhaustion finally claiming him. Sasuke staggered but remained standing, his gaze fixed on the horizon. The battle was over, but the scars remained. The village would rebuild, the wounds would heal, but the world had shifted. The clones' rebellion had exposed fractures in the shinobi world, forcing them to confront the darkness within themselves. In the aftermath, Naruto and Sasuke stood as symbols, not just of power, but of unity. The villages, once divided, now looked to them with renewed hope. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: as long as they stood together, no nightmare would be too great to overcome. And so, beneath a sky painted with the first light of dawn, they took their first steps into a new era.